Hello everyone, I'm Wendy Liebmann, CEO and Chief Shopper at WSL Strategic Retail, and this is Future Shop. This is where I talk to innovators, disruptors, and iconoclasts about the future of retail. Today my guest is a familiar and very lovely face, Candace Corlett, my business partner, president of WSL and leader of all our How America Shops and all other research, amongst many other things. Hello, Candace.
Hi, Wendy. How are you?
I am well. Happy everything. It's lots going on in our WSL shopper-centric world these days. But first and foremost, the baseball season is underway with bigger bases, faster time clocks, and no shifts. So what do you reckon? What's your sense of the season?
Well, I've been watching the pitchers, and if the pitcher didn't have a hard enough job, now he's got to watch the timer. It's like, or watch for the signal from whoever's watching the timer.
I love it.
I think it's a hard job.
It's shoppers' lives. Just keep moving. And there are time clocks everywhere. Doesn't it
Well, I do think that at the root of all this is to make the game go faster, because we know that, people don't have the patience to sit through anything, let alone walk up and down grocery aisles anymore.
Oh, I don't know. Streaming, we stream. But we'll talk about all of that in a minute, right?
We will.
So baseball has lots of planned disruptions, which is actually my perfect segue to our topic today, which is our latest research study, which you have brilliantly called Planned Disruption. Do you like my segue?
I do.
So planned disruption, not just baseball, but life. Why did we do this study? Why now?
No secret. We've lived through 3 years of major disruption. And in all the reading I've done, executives made plans and then threw them out 5 days later. So we learned to really punt. And you and I both grew up in corporate America. And we know that in running our own company, you can handle surprises about 20% of the time. But we don't necessarily like surprises.
Yeah. Lots of unplanned disruption, right?
Right. So the goal here was to say, okay, we've learned how to be really agile and make lemons out of lemonade. And now how do we take that going forward and plan for the disruptions that we know are coming? And that's, as we always say, if we follow the shopper, they'll lead us to what's going to be disruptive.
Yeah. And it certainly feels like that whole, certainly this last 6 months, 12 months of shoppers really trying to take control. So planning themselves, not just we in corporate America, but shoppers themselves really taking a hand now and trying to control what they can as we emerge out of 3 years or 5 years or whatever this cycle of disruption is. So do you get that sense that shoppers now are really trying to do what they need to do to control what's going on a bit better?
Well, I don't think on top of the pandemic and the disruption to supply chain, and now inflation layered on top of that, I think manufacturers have been very astute at taking advantage of the inflation. And shoppers, out of necessity, have said, we are comfortable people, but when you go into the store and pay $6 for a quart of light cream to make your Easter bread, that's outrageous. And eggs,
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to dye eggs, and 18 eggs were like $7.
Yeah.
So people have been forced to think and to work harder. I think we'd sort of coasted. We learned to live with less during the pandemic, and we could coast a bit in terms of paying for convenience. And now people are having to rethink that and work harder to find the discounts and maybe go from store to follow the sales.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think, in talking to clients and the industries around retail at large, this sort of misunderstanding that this notion of, we're all stressed, we have so much on our plate, whether it's, work from home, work from the office if we're lucky, work on the quote unquote front lines, juggling school, all of these things, juggling life, right? And because of that, there's this perception that people want to, yes, simplify, but they think that means simplify shopping in the sense of fewer places to shop. And we're not seeing that at all, right? We're seeing people shopping in many more places than they did pre-pandemic.
Well, there's an explosion in the number of places people are shopping. I think it's up like 40% since 2014.
Yeah.
But I think, what's different now is you can sit on your couch and buy direct from a manufacturer's website. You can't get through Instagram or Facebook without ads popping up. You don't have to go anywhere to shop in these expanded channels. And the new retail that's opened up, that's taken a lot of major retailers by surprise. I mean, places like Aldi and Lidl and Five Below, I mean, they're just an extension of what we've learned to do, shop for the best prices.
Yeah.
Except that they are also loaded with new and they're very easy to navigate.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. I was talking to a retail client of ours today, and he was talking about, this sense of their teams talking about our customer, my customer. And he said, I've been listening to you all at WSL forever. And he said, they are not our customer. Maybe for a moment they're our customer when they walk in the door for something specific or go onto the website or whatever. But he said, that's a big misassumption, if that's even a word, misunderstanding.
Misconception, yeah.
Thank you. Misconception. Thank you. Misconception that actually they are ours, they are mine. And that if you think that way, you really could find yourself even more disrupted than perhaps you are. But one of the things that struck me out of the new work was this whole notion about the role of the store. And now as we've moved through this, and you're talking about I can sit on the couch and I can click here and I can watch Instagram down that dark hole and, click and buy. But the role of the store now feels very clearly or more clearly defined, the physical store. So what did shoppers tell us about that in this new study?
Well, it's wonderful when we're surprised. And the fact that 2/3 of shoppers still discover something new to buy by walking up and down the aisles or watching the end caps. That's across generations. We think of people under 40 sitting with their laptops or tablets or mobile and searching for new things. No, that's not where most of them are finding what's new, which is a big boom for paying attention to how you launch a new SKU, a new item, a new line, a new brand. You have to be on the floor of the store. But it's different, you can't be tucked away on a shelf. And you remember we used to focus so much on how big would the word new be? Nobody's looking for that word new. They're looking for items to pop off the shelf.
Right. Yeah.
So you can't just count on people going up and down the aisles because they don't go up and down all the aisles. But those end caps and displays in the aisles are what capture people's attention and what make the success of a new brand.
Yeah, it is interesting because we had been so obsessed by e-commerce, direct to consumer, even, order online, pick up at the store, all of those new technologies
Right.
that I think we so often, not we, because we're always following the shopper to see the future, as you said,
Right.
but that whole focus on then what is the physical store? What's the role of that store beyond, it's on the corner, I can run in quickly. Even now, I got my groceries in 2 hours. So, how much quicker could I be to get out of the door, get up the supermarket, all of that. So it's this whole focus of it. What was interesting, a couple of weeks ago, we were doing an evaluation for a client of new concepts, and the retailer we were evaluating for them had taken about 20% of their SKUs out of their store. And now the focus was to make it easier to find the basics, but also to give breathing space to things that were new. And that was the first time that it seemed to me to sort of see it come into real life. So, I think about that a lot when you talk about the Aldis of the world, the Five Belows of the world, and how that edited mix helps them highlight things that are unique, different, that you don't see anywhere else.
Exactly. And I think the other thing that feeds into that is we know how low brand loyalty is in most categories. And I think I know that there's this perception that whatever laundry detergent there is on the shelf is okay for me, unless I have a special need. And, bread is bread, and eggs are eggs, and it's price driven, it's convenient driven. And people aren't going to go out of their way, except maybe for price now, because they have to.
Yeah, that's the CPG space too. But then if you look at categories like pets and shoes,
carbonated beverages.
Don't talk to me about carbonated beverages. I've never seen so many brands. Sorry, beverage clients. Never seen so many brands, so long rows. We were in, where was I? Oh, I was in Cincinnati, not naming names, and looking at a major grocery retailer. I think they had like 10 facing aisles of beverages. Right. I mean, it was so hard to even figure out what you wanted beyond the very obvious. So much diversity, so much.
And one of the reasons is that there is such loyalty.
Yeah.
If I'm a Coke drinker or a Fanta drinker or a diet root beer drinker, it's about my brand. It's about my brand. If I want Dr. Pepper, I want Dr. Pepper.
Yeah. Amazing, right?
Well, and it's made it very, very complicated. And when, the same thing holds true when you get into coffee or tea. The explosion in tea brands is... Yeah. But we've got a more sophisticated palate, and there are certain things we'll pay more for.
Yeah. So, you talked about surprises before. Surprises out of this work?
I think the discovery that new is still very grounded in the store was a major surprise. I am in awe of the trust that shoppers have in these emerging channels. And I'm talking about ads that pop up on Instagram, Facebook, or a niche brand where you go directly to the manufacturer's website. There is this inherent trust that I will order it, give them my credit card, and I will get it. And if I don't like it, I'll be able to return it.
Yeah. I mean, you and I have a long enough history to know that in the early days, whether it was television shopping or obviously, the catalog shopping days or the beginning of e-commerce and shopping, and that there was this tremendous nervousness of, do I really want to give this my credit card?
Right. Well, those days are over.
Right. Yeah, clearly, right? Yeah. Clearly.
But the fact, and you used to, when a new retailer arrived, you could go in the store, check out the merchandise, and decide whether or not it was for you. And now we just go and order from live stream or a niche brand website, or what is most fascinating to me is the pop-up ads on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
Or whatever social media platform you're on.
Yes. Hello, TikTok. One of the things that's interesting to me about that is when I think about the surprises and the places people go, and you're absolutely right, that diversity of everything from live streaming, which feels like old television shopping, but live streaming, as you said, direct to consumer, the metaverse, people have been like, the metaverse, really? But I thought what was fascinating to me, not just that I think the numbers were about a quarter of people said they had, they regularly were in the metaverse.
Every week.
Right, every week, which is really stunning. But what they were doing there, what they were doing and spending there, and the categories that they were actually spending on beyond, some Nike something for my fabulous avatar, they were the things that I found fascinating and kind of opened the door to think about the next level of disruption. Pets, right? Fitness classes.
Fitness classes, concerts, without the fees from StubHub and all that.
Oh, right.
I mean,
you don't want to pay $5,000 to see Bruce Springsteen? Don't go there.
Think about that.
Don't go there. Maybe you would. Oh, dear.
I am seeing him Friday night.
But not.
And I won't tell you how much the tickets are.
I don't want to know. Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
But the fascinating thing is the metaverse. We think of it as having to use the goggles. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have been on several brand sites where they literally lead you into the forest. And as you walk along the forest, they're introducing products. And you click on the product and it tells you everything about that product.
Yeah. And
you're in the forest and it's just removed you to a wonderful place.
Yeah. And
I buy.
Yeah.
And you know me, I'm a pretty frugal spender, but
not when it came to beauty, right, the other day.
Take me down those foresty or just fantasy world websites.
Yeah.
And I don't need goggles to do it. And I just roam and click on a product and think, oh, that'll be very comforting.
Well, and I do think if you put it in the context of this disruption that we're talking about, we tend to think, or CPG companies, fashion companies, retailers of all sorts tend to think about it's either or. And I think our greatest insight learning a number of years ago, but more recently in our work was, the people who order online, pick up in the store, park the car and go into the store. It's not, I only do one. No. If I get all the essentials off my list, like I just got the groceries delivered in 2 hours, that doesn't mean I won't go into the supermarket or the wine store or anywhere else. It doesn't mean I won't go into the Target and look at the beauty aisle or see what's new or somewhere else. It's not.
That's where the discovery takes place.
That's right. That's right.
That's where the discoveries happen.
Yeah. And I do think that's where, from a manufacturer, retailer, virtually any category, we're starting to see this organized chaos, planned disruption on the part of shoppers.
It's very planned on the part of shoppers.
Mm-hmm.
And now the challenge is for manufacturers and retailers to seize that and say, how do I be everywhere? Yeah. And that's becoming a challenge.
Yeah. And that, you alluded to supply chain issues in the beginning. Well, that complexity of, okay, now I've got a little bit over here and a little bit over there and some over there, and some days the shopper's in that store and, on my website here, that ability to manage the supply chain in all of that, the ability to manage consistency of pricing, if that's even an issue anymore, those things become hugely complicated. So when I step back, it even struck me the other day, I think there was a whole conversation about movies, and, we've streamed ourselves to almost distraction, but Amazon coming out and saying they needed to actually release their new movie Air in the theaters for a period of time before they put it on Prime. So again, it's the same sort of thing. What sort of experience do I want? Why am I there? Is it social? Is it, another way of going out versus staying in and doing click kind of thing? So that world seems to be very distracting and disruptive. Right. Particularly on the part of the companies that are trying to sell us stuff versus the shopper or the viewer who's just like, no, it's the way I want it. So,
and wherever it's convenient for me at that moment. And that's what makes, I've been saying for 3 years, there is no longer a path to purchase.
Right.
I get up with very good intentions of going out to get groceries, and 3 hours later, they're at my door because things get in the way. Or my mood changes. That's not how I want to spend my time.
Well, I think that's the other piece, and we saw that in some work we did last year. And, for everybody who's listening, these are national surveys. This isn't, two people and a dog, although sometimes that's helpful. But these are, big national surveys. And last year, when we were looking at the sort of emotional sensibility that shoppers had about, if I feel good, I'll go to the store.
Right.
Or if I've got a lot of things to do, I'll go to multiple stores because it's easier than going down the e-commerce rabbit hole kind of thing, looking for many things. If I don't, if I'm tired, I'm busy, I'm cranky, which could be many days in my case, then I'm just going to click and sort of being able to understand and respond to that emotional sentiment condition is the other complexity here, right? When we think about disruption.
And it's very disrupting. And that's why we named this report what we did, because if you follow the shopper, read what we're printing, read what the majority of shoppers are saying, you'll know what you have to plan for. And it's not easy because, as you said, people who are selling us things count on us to go to websites or retail spaces to buy.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to organize to let me go on their website and buy one or even three. They don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And very often that's how I want to do it. And when we talk about the smaller formats and taking away items to make space on the shelf, well, there are certain things that I absolutely want. And are you now going to give me the tool via a QR code to order that from you? Or am I going to go home and say, okay, I'll just get it on Amazon?
Yeah. So, within all this complexity, that's sort of the difficult news. We've got one other factor that layers into this. I mean, we can't ignore the state of the economy, right? Conversations I was having today. What's going to happen? Recession or not? How are shoppers thinking about that? I mean, as we talk to shoppers, we're sort of in this mode of just in case, right? The economists may say one thing, but as shoppers in this world of trying to take control, they're taking control just in case it gets worse, right?
Well, we do know that, shoppers are no longer fools. 90% of them believe that the prices that they're experiencing right now are going to stay there or go higher. I mean, they now know how business capitalism plays out. And so they're just having to make choices. But what I do admire is they never, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but most people don't do without. They find other ways. And, the combination of the new channels, the new retailers, the fast in and out small formats with lower prices. I mean, people are finding ways. We always thought millennials, when they were poor college students, were shopping in dollar stores. Well, they took that habit with them as they got older. And they've forced changes in dollar stores.
Yeah.
Starting with nothing's a dollar, but
yeah, you're right. And you and I marvel at, the Aldis and Lidls of the world, the Five Belows of this world. We were just looking at some of our retail innovation work last week of, an end caps or displays that Five Below was doing around health and wellness. I mean, everything was $5. There were, suggestions around things for stress, things for stretching, things for, hydration. I mean, everything under $5. There it was at Five Below.
Right.
And these smaller formats, not just lower price, but smaller format retailers really doing quite an extraordinary job of adapting to trends, but also making it really easy and surprising for shoppers to be there.
And you've touched on something that the other side of our research, the retail safari.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Five Below had that word manifestation up on an end cap. And I really didn't even know what it meant. I had to go look it up or ask one of our, Gen Z employees, what's with the manifestation, And Five Below had it up there. And that picking up that language and those brands from social media and giving them credibility.
Yeah.
I mean, hims and hers in Target. I mean, I know people who haven't even heard of hims and hers, and they're encountering it in Target and thinking it's a new brand.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true. And, looking around and, we're lucky, aside from a diverse range of clients across lots of categories and lots of retail channels, we're also talking to the press a lot who interview us and some of the conversations that we all have with them when they're talking about new formats that are opening and the impact of social media. I must say one of the things that I don't think I was so surprised about, but came out of the research was, while I trust a lot of these other resources, there was this beginning of concern about influencers, I think. Did I remember that correctly?
No, and that to me is the contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people have told us there's like a 15-point gap between the people who read Amazon reviews and trust Amazon reviews and reviews on retailer websites. And, when a review is labeled paid promotion, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, well.
But clearly shoppers are interpreting it to mean, oh, this person got paid for this good review. Yeah. So there's that gap forming in trusting reviews. But on the other hand, I'll follow an ad on Instagram, buy something, give them my credit card, and expect it'll show up.
Yeah. Well, the other piece, though, which in some ways felt like old as new again, was as I recall, the number one place, person, whatever people trusted were friends and family, right? It was sort of old, to your point, old as new, and all of that. That was back to number. We used to laugh some time ago. Sorry, everybody, we don't mean to make this historical, although it's always helpful to have a context, is this notion of in the early days of sort of social media and things, who did I trust? And the answer was, we always said it was friends and strangers. And now friends and family have sort of been wrested back as this sort of number one trusted place for information and resources when I'm making decisions about things. So don't think that's not an important marketing tool in terms of, building awareness, either a brand or a retail space. Clearly very important as we sort of move through this disrupted landscape. So, Candace, I always put you on the spot, as for our clients, or anybody listening, what do I have to think about now? What are the 2 or 3 things that we really have to be thinking about as we move into 2023, 24, 25, maybe?
I think every brand and retailer needs to step back and take the time to do that SWOT analysis on how did we get through? How did we become so agile? How did we make decisions so quickly? How did retailers manage to execute curbside pickup and vaccines in thousands of stores.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they pulled it off. And they have to keep that spirit of agility and attention to the point of sale, because shoppers now expect so much more. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you were able to give me curbside pickup or in-store pickup, when I'd never used that before, and it became second nature to you, well, now I just expect so much more of you.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think it struck me too, coming through the pandemic and the vaccination process. And we've seen that in other work, this whole sense about, we saw the pharmacist. The pharmacist was out in front of the counter giving vaccinations, calming, coaching people. And it was so powerful. And the level of trust in that activity was so great. And then the pharmacist went back behind the counter.
Right.
And so when
the local high school student is now explaining to you about your medication.
Right. And so, oh no. Anyway.
That's true.
Really? Anyway.
You recognize your kids' friends are working in pharmacy.
Yeah. But that is the piece. And I think that's such a always wise, you are, that whole concept of let's not forget what we learned.
Right.
And let's not forget, whether it's the use of a QR code, is it an effective tool? We saw that, apps, we saw that skyrocket. And let's not forget that this ecosystem that the shopper has around the country, around the world actually in all our work, has learned to take from to build this disrupted but planned disruption of their own. To your point, there is no singular path to purchase. There is no my customer. There is all of those.
Very wise.
Yeah, and I think that becomes really critical as we move forward. Let us not forget what we learned here.
And one more thing, the shopper was forced to become very digitally literate. Mm-hmm. And now use that to your advantage. I always get worried when retailers say they're going to spread out the merchandise and reduce the inventory on the shelf. But how are you going to keep that purchase in your chain? Mm-hmm. When someone comes in and only wants, I'm making this up, Tide for allergic skin.
Right.
How do you that may be a low turning item, but how do you make sure you keep that sale in your store?
So funny you say that. I have they're English crackers called digestives, and they are so hard to find. And when I find them at a store, I buy them in bulk. They're great with blue cheese, things like that. They're kind of a sweet, savory biscuit. And my places to buy them has become smaller, to the point of nothing now. So clearly I'm going to have to go online, right? And figure out where they are and how I can buy a case of them or something. But you're absolutely right. How do I facilitate that when I'm in the store? Yeah.
And how do you use it? I mean, don't let people forget how digitally literate they are.
Right.
Give them incentives. Help them pop up your app as soon as they cross your threshold to help them find what they need and to order what they can't find.
Yeah. So I think that's sort of definitely shown people that if you didn't know that there is disruption, we all knew that, but understanding that the shopper is very planned and purposeful, mindful and experienced, so that even if we thought we had them before, really nobody owns that customer. And that ability to not forget all the things we've learned over these last 3 years becomes increasingly important in adapting to that, what comes next, what the future.
To planning for your disruption. Yeah.
Adapting to this future of retail becomes so critical now that without that, we always say this, there is no going back. There is no going back. And we need to understand that as we all sort of unmasked emerge in the world, because we're not going to be able to talk about this going backwards much any longer.
No,
so anyway,
going forward.
all going forwards. Well, may it be a Mets-Yankees World Series. Only 150 more games to go, my dear.
Very disappointing game yesterday.
I know. Anyway, let's not weep.
Lowest hitting team in the league, and the Mets lost to them.
I know. Well, look at the poor old Dodgers. Okay, guys, I know you don't want to hear Candace and me talking about baseball anymore, unless you're the CPG guys. They always want to hear about baseball.
Right.
So we're always happy.
Okay, thank you, Wendy.
Always, Candace. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
So for all of you, see you in the future. There is so much to be seen here. Plan disruption has to be on everybody's desk, on everybody's desktop, because the shopper is there. The key now is, are you planning your own disruption as you move forward? Are you following the shopper to see the future? There's a lot going on out there that's incredibly exciting beyond the baseball. So stay tuned.